They may have uncovered the true origins of Britain's most famous monument.
What if Stonehenge wasn't built to honor the sky, but to control the people standing beneath it? For centuries, it was treated as a mystery of faith or ritual. But new scientific evidence suggests something far more calculated. By tracking the sun, the moon, and even sound itself, Stonehenge may have controlled when people worked, celebrated, gathered, and obeyed. And if that's true, then Stonehenge wasn't just ancient architecture, it was power carved into stone. For centuries, the biggest question about Stonehenge sounded simple. Where did the stones come from?
The name Stonehenge is thought to come from the Old English or Saxon word Stanhengen, which means stone hanging.
The massive gray pillars, the sarsens, were already hard to explain, but the smaller stones, the blue stones, were the real problem. They don't belong on Salisbury Plain, they don't match the local rock, and they definitely didn't form there. For a long time, there was an easy answer: glaciers. The idea was comforting. Ancient ice dragged the stones from Wales, dropped them near Stonehenge, and humans just arranged what nature left behind. But that story started to fall apart when scientists looked closer. At Aberystwyth University, Professor Richard Bevans and his team tested fragments from Stonehenge using advanced geochemical analysis. They weren't guessing. They measured trace elements, tiny chemical signatures locked inside the rock. Thorium, zirconium, exact matches. The results pointed to one specific place, Crag Rossi Felon, a rocky outcrop in western Wales, over 125 miles away. And here's the key detail glaciers can't explain. If ice carried these stones, similar rocks would be scattered across southern England. They aren't. They exist in one place, Stonehenge, which leaves only one explanation scientists can't escape. These stones were quarried, transported, and deliberately placed by human hands more than 5,000 years ago. But that creates a much bigger problem, because if ancient people could move stones this far, what else were they capable of, and why go to such impossible lengths in the first place? Once scientists accepted that humans moved the stones, a deeper question followed. Who were these people? For a long time, the answer seemed obvious: local farmers, small tribes, people who never traveled far from home. That assumption didn't survive modern science. Near Stonehenge, archaeologists uncovered a grave now known as the Amesbury Archer. At first, it looked ordinary, a man buried with tools, arrowheads, and ornaments. But when researchers tested his teeth and bones, everything changed. Using isotope analysis, scientists can trace where a person grew up by studying the water and food signatures locked inside their body. The results were clear. This man did not grow up in Britain. Experts from British universities concluded he likely came from Central Europe, possibly the Alpine region, hundreds of miles away. And he not alone. More burials around Stonehenge show similar signs. People from distant lands were arriving here, generation after generation, not by accident, on purpose. This means Stonehenge wasn't built by a single village or tribe. It was connected to a network of people stretching across Europe. Ideas, skills, beliefs, they traveled along with the builders. And that changes the story completely. Stonehenge was not a local monument. It was a destination.
But here's where the mystery deepens. If people were coming from so far away, this place had to offer something powerful enough to pull them in, something worth crossing continents for. And scientists now believe that power wasn't just in the stones, it was hidden in time itself. Once Stonehenge became a destination, scientists asked a dangerous question. What were people coming here for? The answer didn't come from myth, it came from math. At Bournemouth University, Professor Timothy Darvill studied the arrangement of Stonehenge's largest stones, the sarsens. Not their size, not their beauty, their number. 30 massive upright stones once formed a perfect circle. 30! According to Darville's research, published in the journal Antiquity, this was no coincidence. Each stone represented a single day. Together, they formed a 30-day month. The stones weren't random, they were ordered. 12 cycles of 30 days created a 360-day year, and at the center of the monument stood 5 even larger stones, placed deliberately apart. Those stones accounted for the remaining days, special days, likely reserved for festivals, rituals, or sacred authority. This wasn't decoration, it was a calendar carved into stone. In a world without writing, this mattered more than almost anything else. Knowing when to plant crops, when to harvest, when to gather, when to worship. Whoever controlled the calendar controlled daily life. Stonehenge didn't just mark time, it defined it. And the precision didn't stop there. 4 isolated stones on the outer edge, the station stones, may have allowed the system to stay accurate over years, even accounting for extra days. But here's the twist. The sun wasn't the only thing this monument was tracking, because hidden in the layout was a cycle far harder to follow, one that takes nearly 19 years to complete, and it didn't belong to the sun at all. Tracking the sun is simple. Anyone can watch it rise and set. Tracking the moon is something else entirely. The moon doesn't follow a steady path. Its rise and set slowly drift along the horizon, reaching extreme points only once every 18.6 years. This rare event is known as a major lunar standstill. For ancient people, recognizing this cycle would have taken patience and memory that lasted generations. Now, scientists believe Stonehenge was built to do exactly that. Researchers from universities, including Oxford and Leicester, have focused on 4 stones placed far from the main circle, known as the station stones. When mapped together, they form a wide rectangle around the monument. Their positions are strange, unless they mark something moving. Astronomical modeling shows that these stones align with the moon's most extreme rise and set points during a lunar standstill. This means Stonehenge wasn't just watching the sky day by day, it was recording time across decades. And the timing matters. Many of the earliest burials at Stonehenge were placed in the same direction where the moon reaches its lowest rise during this rare cycle. That suggests the moon wasn't symbolic decoration. It was tied to death, ancestry, and remembrance. The builders weren't just marking seasons. They were connecting the living to the dead through the sky itself. But the moon wasn't the only invisible force built into this monument, because Stonehenge doesn't just shape light.
It shapes something you can't see, but can hear. And when scientists finally tested that idea, the results were completely unexpected. Stonehenge looks silent, but scientists now believe that silence was part of the illusion. At the University of Salford, acoustic engineers asked a question no one had seriously tested before. What if Stonehenge wasn't just built to be seen, but to be heard? To find out, researchers created an exact-scale replica called Minihenge. Using laser scans from historic England, every curve, gap, and missing stone was digitally reconstructed as the monument likely appeared around 2500 BCE. Then they tested sound. Inside the stone circle, voices became clearer, louder, more focused. The stones reflected sound inward while blocking noise from the outside. Measurements showed an increase of more than 4 decibels, enough to turn a quiet voice into something commanding. Outside the circle, sound almost disappeared. This wasn't accidental. It meant that rituals, speeches, or music spoken at the center were meant for a select few, not the crowd beyond the stones. Stonehenge didn't just gather people, it separated them. And there's more. Some of the smaller stones produce a ringing tone when struck, almost like metal. Experiments by music researchers revealed these ringing stones could be played like instruments. In the past, before modern concrete dampened them, the sound would have been stronger, deeper, unavoidable. Imagine it, a voice amplified, a rhythm echoing, the crowd watching but not hearing. Stonehenge wasn't only tracking time, it was shaping experience. But sound and sky still don't explain one disturbing detail. Because this monument wasn't built once, it was changed again and again. And scientists now believe that constant rebuilding was the point. Stonehenge looks permanent, solid, final. But archaeology tells a different story. The stones didn't stay put. Excavations show that many of the blue stones were raised, removed, reshaped, and repositioned multiple times. Some were broken on purpose. Others were reused in new arrangements decades, even centuries later. This wasn't repair work, it was ritual. At the same time, new evidence shows Stonehenge was part of a much larger sacred landscape. Nearby sites like Durrington Walls, Woodhenge, and the River Avon formed a connected system. Wood for the living, stone for the dead, water as the path between them. Stonehenge may have been the final stage, not the whole ceremony. And then the changes stopped. Some stones were never raised, others were dragged to the site and left where they fell. Plans appeared to have been abandoned halfway through. No signs of invasion, no evidence of disaster, just silence. Scientists believe this points to a cultural shift, a moment when the beliefs that justified such effort suddenly lost their power. The calendar remained, the alignments still worked, but the reason to keep building was gone. Which raises a final, unsettling thought. If Stonehenge was designed to control time, sound, movement, and memory, and then deliberately left unfinished, what happened to the people who no longer needed it, and what replaced the power it once held? For centuries, people asked how Stonehenge was built. Science answered that. Then they asked who built it. Science answered that too. But one question still refuses to disappear. Why stop? The stones still worked. The calendar still marked the year. The moon still rose where it always had. Yet the builders walked away. Archaeologists see no signs of war, no famine buried in the soil, no sudden collapse. Instead, what they see is something far stranger, a monument that outlived the belief system that created it. Stonehenge once controlled time, ritual, sound, and movement. It told people when to gather, when to mourn, when to celebrate, and when to obey. And then it lost that power. Whatever replaced it didn't need stone calendars, didn't need lunar memory, didn't need sound shaped by rock. The people changed. And when belief changes, monuments become meaningless, no matter how massive they are. Today, Stonehenge still stands, silent, accurate, unfinished. Which leaves one final possibility scientists rarely say out loud. Maybe Stonehenge wasn't abandoned because it failed. Maybe it was abandoned because it worked. And once people understood what it was truly doing, they chose to leave it behind. Because the real mystery of Stonehenge isn't what it was built for. It's why the knowledge it held was never used again. And if we ever rediscover exactly what made people walk away, we may finally understand what they were afraid of.